though many continue to dismiss stories about titans and strange creatures as mere myths or legends, the truth about the existence of an ancient race of giants is evident on old maps. Yes, there are signs that giants roamed the earth long ago. It's becoming clear that significant efforts have been made to conceal this information from the masses. Why? So in the last session, we talked about Admiral Byrd's secret mission to Antarctica. He referred to the area as the bottom of the world. It's located in the far north, but because Europeans placed north on top of modern maps, Antarctica is seen as Earth's southernmost continent. But that's not true. It's the northernmost continent. This region is the coldest, driest, and windiest place on Earth, with mountain peaks over 16,000 feet tall. Now, what's interesting is that there were various groups that had a special interest in Antarctica during World War II, specifically Greenland. I showed you this Abraham Ortelius map from 1570 of Scandinavia. Here you see that right below Greenland, it shows Thule as a separate island. Here's a close-up of Thule, and look to the right, you see what's called Oceanus Hyperborea. So it's possible that Greenland was the mainland, and the other smaller islands are an archipelago like Hawaii that has a chain of smaller islands. The other thing to consider is that there may be islands within an island. It's called a recursive island. Some of them could be underwater by now and no longer visible. But we see the island named Thule, and it was located in an area with a lot of scattered islands. Now, just getting another close-up of this area, we see that there are other islands near Greenland. We see Iceland. It's spelled the same way we spell island. You also see an island called Friesland, and there are other smaller islands in that area. Now look at where the red arrow is pointing. You see Marie Byrd Land. This is an unclaimed region of Antarctica named after the wife of Admiral Byrd, who explored the region in 1929. It's supposed to be the largest unclaimed territory on Earth. Now, if Byrd got that far, then it's likely that he was able to see whether or not there were other islands beyond that point. British explorer Hubert Wilkins said that Greenland should not be regarded as a large-scale peninsula, but that it was two large islands separated from lands farther to the south. And Byrd said that there were new lands yet to be explored in that region. Here we have some additional corroborating evidence for that. This was published in the New York Times on March 15, 1931. And I'm glad that I came across this newspaper article because I had the same question. Is there something beyond the South Pole? Well, listen to what it says. Admiral Byrd, recently intimating that he may lead another expedition to the Antarctic, said that there is a vast unexplored area on the other side of the South Pole about which nobody knows. He indicated airplanes as best suited to discovery, to be operated from a base or from such a base as he established at the Bay of Whales. There are reasons for believing that whoever undertakes the next penetration of the Antarctic on a large scale will seek the shore of Weddell Sea on the other side of the continent from the Bay of Whales. In his last expedition to the Graham Land, Regent Sir Hubert Wilkins planned to fly from the shore of Weddell Sea to the Bay of Whales to call on Admiral Byrd at Little America, but could find no ice surface suitable for a takeoff. It goes on to say that such a flight would have disclosed topographical features of the greatest interest to geographers. The highest significance of the interior, says J. Gordon Hayes, consists in this, that it contains some of the main features of the continent, and yet they are largely unknown. The recent explorations of Bird, Wilkins, Mawson, and Reiser Larsen, and the circumnavigation of Antarctica by the Norvegia have made its challenge to the adventurous throughout the world. Is that not consistent with what he said in his interview?
Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this Earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America.
Now, if you tie this into the news article in the New York Post, he is saying, yes, there is an unexplored area on the other side of the South Pole. Now, just so you know, there are those who believe that Iceland may actually be ancient Thule. We're going to read an excerpt from this book called Ultima Thule, or A Summer in Iceland. This book was written in 1875. The author is asking this question: is Iceland Ultima Thule? So the author says he hopes to make it evident that Thule was used according to date in 5 several senses, a sufficient reason for the confusion which has so long invested the subject. So he believes that Thule is Iceland. It goes on to say that it has been well remarked that no place is more often mentioned by the ancients than the island hid from us by snow and winter, and yet that no position is more controverted. So even back then, there was confusion about where to find Thule. It says, there has been a king of Thule and a princess of Thule, but where and what is Thule? So he says, firstly, it was referred to poetically. Secondly, it was applied to Iceland and Iceland only from the earliest ages of its exploration. So, was it Greenland, Iceland, or neither? Let's get some more information. We're going to read this article about Hyperborea. It says Hyperborea was a fabulous realm of eternal spring located in the far north beyond the home of the north wind. Hyperborea was usually described as a continent-bound land, bordered on the north by the great earth-encircling river Oceanus, and on the south the peaks of the legendary Riffian Mountains. So wherever this place is, it should be surrounded by towering mountains. Now, food for thought. Could those mountains now be under the ice? Let's go on. It says its main river was the Eridanos, whose banks were lined with amber weeping poplar trees, and its waters home to flocks of white swans. The southern border of Hyperborea was guarded by the bitterly cold peaks of the impassable Riffian Mountains, home to Boreas, the north wind, whose chilly breath brought winter to the lands of the south. Its peaks were inhabited by gold-guarding griffins, and its valleys by the fierce, one-eyed Arimaspoi tribe. So this place is guarded by strange creatures. Let's look at another Russian source. This is talking about Russia's ancient Hyperborean legends and their mythical realms. It says Russians' ancient Hyperborean legends and their mythical realms have long captivated the imagination of those intrigued by folklore and mysticism. These tales from the remote reaches of Russian history encompass a rich tapestry of supernatural beings, enchanted landscapes, and epic adventures that have been passed down through generations. At the core of these legends lies the concept of Hyperborea, a mythical land believed to exist beyond the northern winds, shrouded in eternal winter and untouched by the passage of time. This ethereal realm is said to be home to ancient gods, powerful sorcerers, and mystical creatures unlike any found in the known world. Here it lists several notable aspects that define the Hyperborean myth. It says Hyperborea is depicted as a paradise on earth. Also, it was inhabited by giants. The Hyperboreans were said to be giants, towering over ordinary humans. These beings were known for their strength, intelligence, and exceptional lifespan, living for thousands of years. Now, many of those humans recorded in the Old Testament lived an exceedingly long number of years. Adam lived to be 930 years old. His son Seth lived to 912. Methuselah is the oldest person mentioned, and he lived to be 969 years old. But something happened to change all of that. The Most High placed a restriction on the lifespan of man and said they would not go beyond 120 years. What caused it? The event in Genesis 6 where the fallen angels mated with the daughters of men. Now here's the key. He placed a restriction on man, but it didn't say that this applied to the nephilim, the hybrids born to these fallen angels and those women. And it didn't apply to the fallen angels. Instead, their judgment would be to war against each other and wipe each other out. Ultimately, the demonic spirits of the Nephilim, after they killed each other, and the fallen would receive their final judgment in the end. What else was significant about these Hyperboreans? They had divine connections. It says they were believed to be in close contact with the gods, such as Apollo, who was often associated with the sun and music. So they're talking about them having divine connections to the fallen angels. Also, mythical artifacts. It says some stories speak of magical artifacts and ancient knowledge preserved in Hyperborea, hidden away from the rest of the world. These treasures were said to hold immense power and wisdom. It goes on to say legends suggest that the Hyperboreans possessed advanced technology and powers that rivaled even the grandest of modern achievements. Some stories recount how they could control the weather, sound familiar? And had the ability to communicate with animals and spirits. They were also believed to have been great healers, capable of curing the most grievous of ailments. The legacy of Hyperborean tales is profound in Russian cultural heritage. These myths have influenced numerous aspects of Russian art, literature, and even music. There are still communities in Russia that celebrate festivals and perform rituals honoring these ancient stories, thereby keeping the spirit of the Hyperborean legends alive. Obviously, those stories came from somewhere. Ancient Greek historians like Herodotus and Pindar often referenced Hyperborea, weaving intricate tales of this enigmatic land. Some believe that the Hyperboreans shared mystical knowledge and advanced technology with the ancient world. And we know from 1 Enoch that the Watchers that sinned did just that. It says several explorers and theorists have tried to pinpoint its location, linking it to the Russian Arctic, the Altai Mountains, or even the lost city of Atlantis. The speculated locations of Hyperborea add layers of mystery and allure to the legend. So, among the most popular are Russian Arctic Circle, Altai Mountains, and the Ural Mountains. If I had to select from the list, I would say Altai Mountains, but that will have to be another lesson. Geographically, Hyperborea has been placed in the far northern territories, often linked to the Arctic regions. This mythical land was said to be inaccessible to ordinary humans due to its remote and sacred nature. Some versions describe Hyperborea as an island, while others consider it a lush and fertile land surrounded by towering mountains and eternal gardens. The legends also speak of the Hyperborean kings, who were allegedly demigods, ruling with unparalleled intelligence and strength. These narratives have woven a rich tapestry of folklore that continues to fascinate historians and mythologists alike. The Hyperborean civilization is often depicted as advanced, both spiritually and technologically, embodying an ideal society detached from the struggles and conflicts of the mortal world. It says here in Genesis 6:4, there were giants in the earth in those days and also after that, when the sons of Yah came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children unto them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. In case you missed it, it tells us that they were giants. They were called mighty men because of their height and their strength, but it wasn't impossible for them to be defeated. The Israelites were given the power to overcome them, but clearly nations were worshiping them as gods, and sources say that they had advanced technology and powers. Well, where did they get it from? From their fathers, the fallen. So it stands to reason that they traveled to other locations and used their knowledge to build great structures like pyramids and other grand architectural designs. I would also say that the evidence bears that out. Let's just look at this building. Some of the buildings in Petra and other places around the world points to very large beings as the builders. I mean, they're still confused about the pyramids. So look at this building here. Did humans really build this? Without advanced knowledge, that is. And my question on this one would be, why? A building like this is needed, why? Look at this magnificent structure. A building like that. But they were still forced to use a horse and a buggy. Please. There's a channel that some of you may be familiar with called My Lunch Break. I watched some of his earlier videos about the old world buildings. Those are really good. And I believe he did a really good job in pointing out how it would have been impossible for people in the 1800s to have built some of those structures with the primitive tools being used during that time. I mean, just look at these structures. Massive. Why would a man build such a massive structure with a door so high that he can't even reach the doorknob? Just think about that. Now, it is my belief that over time, As a result of dilution of the bloodline, the seed of the fallen lost some of the things that caused them to stand out and caused men to fear them. It could have been genetic drift, who knows? But we have sources, scripture being one of them, proving the giants were here. So we're going to look at some stories from Native American tribes and see if it lines up with what we've covered thus far. This is called Ancient Race of White Giants Described in Native Legends from Many Tribes. It says, who said innumerable moons ago, a race of white men 10 feet high here inhabited a large range of country. It says several Native American tribes have passed down legends of a race of white giants who were wiped out. So let's look at a few of these stories. This says Horatio Bardwell Cushman wrote in his 1899 book, History of the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and Natchez Indians, the tradition of the Choctaws told of a race of giants that once inhabited the now state of Tennessee, and with whom their ancestors fought when they arrived in Mississippi in their migration from the west. Their tradition states, the Nahalo race of giants was of wonderful stature, or great stature. So Cushman said Nahalo came to be used to describe all white people, but it originally referred to, or referred specifically to, a giant white race with whom the Choctaw came into contact when they first crossed the Mississippi River. The Nahalo were said to be cannibals, whom the Choctaw killed whenever the opportunity arose. Here's an account from the Comanches. Chief Rolling Thunder of the Comanches, a tribe from the Great Plains, gave the following account of an ancient race of white giants in 1857. Innumerable moons ago, a race of white men, 10 feet high, and far more rich and powerful than any white people now living, here inhabited a large range of country extending from the rising to the setting sun. Their fortifications crown the summits of the mountains, protecting their populous cities situated in the intervening valleys. They excelled every other nation which was flourished, either before or since, in all manner of cunning handicraft, were brave and warlike, ruling over land they had wrested or taken from its ancient possessors with a high and haughty hand. Compared with them, the pale faces of the present day were pygmies in both art and arms. So in other words, he's saying the pale faces you see today would be very short, like pygmies, compared to the giants who came before. This is what the Navajo said about the Starnake people. It says, a regal race of white giants endowed with mining technology who dominated the West, enslaved lesser tribes, and had strongholds all through the Americas. They were either extinguished or went back to the heavens. And in 1553, Pedro Cieza de Leon wrote in Chronicle of Peru about legendary giants described to him by the Manta indigenous people. They are, however, reports concerning giants in Peru who landed on the coast at the point of Santa Elena. The natives relate the following tradition, which had been received from their ancestors from very remote times. So this is what they said. There arrived on the coast in boats made of reeds, as big as large ships, a party of men of such size that from the knee downwards their height was as great as the entire height of an ordinary man. Though he might be of good stature, their limbs were all in proportion to the deformed size of their bodies, and it was a monstrous thing to see their heads, with hair reaching to the shoulders, Their eyes were as large as small plates. Leon said that the sexual habits of the giants were revolting to the natives, and heaven eventually wiped out the giants because of those habits. Now here's what the Paiutes had to say. They said they have an oral tradition that told of red-haired white cannibals about 10 feet tall who lived in or near what is now known as Lovelock Cave in Nevada. It is unclear whether this oral tradition about the so-called Sitka giants existed, or if it was an exaggeration or distortion of their legends made after the Paiutes were mostly killed or dispersed in 1833 by an expedition by explorer Joseph Walker. And of course, there are those who want to dismiss the information, but the oral stories of these tribes are very similar. We also have the description in the book of Enoch telling us what the children of the fallen look like. So for those who ignore what is written in Scripture and say that everyone on the planet came from one of the 3 sons of Noah, you're lying, because Scripture is clear when it says some of the angels mated with the daughters of men. Goliath could not have been an ordinary man. If so, why was Saul and his men so afraid to fight him? Why did the Most High tell the Israelites to wipe them out? Because it was a hybrid race. So it is possible that over time, as these hybrids diluted their bloodline, or because of genetic drift, they lost some of the things that caused men to fear them. But Scripture is clear. It says there were giants in the earth in those days and after, and they were not the seed of Adam. Just consider the story about the wheat and the tares. The seed came from different sources. Now let's go back to the events leading up to the end of World War II and see if we can make some connections. This was a headline article found in the New York Times in April of 1941. Roosevelt takes steps to head off Hitler. It says Germany sent a Norwegian ship to set up a secret radio station in Greenland in 1941. So the United States knew that Germany was already positioning itself in Greenland. And that is why Admiral Byrd said that they were going to see if bases were there. The article says, in a bold move to keep the Nazis out of the Danish colony of Greenland, Roosevelt announced that Greenland was the world's largest island and it had been placed formally under the protection of the United States. Isn't that a bit odd that the United States saw a need to protect a Danish colony? You know it had to be something in it for them, right? So it says, the U.S. will establish air bases, naval facilities, and other fortifications there as part of the system to protect the whole Western Hemisphere against invasion. This means, the White House said, that the United States will fight if necessary to protect the integrity of Greenland as well as of Canada and the 20 Latin American republics, and also various outlying islands. What were those outlying islands? Are they not named on the maps? Including the French island of Martinique. So it says the inclusion of Greenland in the American system of cooperative hemispheric defense as a hands-off warning to Germany was arranged with the consent of the Danish minister in Washington. So based on this agreement, Greenland is under the protection of the United States. But when did they feel the need to do this? It says this step was taken only after German activity around Greenland had increased and German warplanes were observed flying over the vast island and reconnoitering perhaps with a view to establish bases of their own. Obviously, they were afraid that the Germans would get the upper hand in Greenland and those unnamed islands. But why? And this is where things get a little loopy, and they quickly begin to label things as conspiracy theories. Some of you may know who this is. This is Paul Hellyer. He was Canada's former defense minister during the 60s. Now, he insisted that alien life forms were currently on Earth. Now, having the job of a defense minister is a very important role. In Canada, they are responsible for the management and direction of all matters related to national defense. Now, after his retirement, he became the first cabinet-level politician from a G8 country to go on record claiming that extraterrestrials are already on Earth. He was outspoken about Earth's interaction with many extraterrestrials, including a race of tall whites. Here are some excerpts from Hellyer's interview after Sophie Shevardnadze asked him why he believes UFOs are as real as airplanes flying over our heads. He said, "Because I know that they are. As a matter of fact, they've been visiting our planet for thousands of years." Visiting? Or were they already living here? He says, "There's just so much evidence if anybody will take time off to do a little bit of research and study." So he says there are about 80 different species of aliens, and some of them look just like us. And they could walk down the street and you wouldn't know if you walked past one. They are what we call Nordic blondes and also the tall whites, who were actually working with the U.S. Air Force in Nevada. They're able to get away with that. Why? Because of their appearance. He said they look like tall Nordic blondes. Tall whites. Far-fetched? For some, information like this may be. But we have to wonder, where are they getting the technological information? Because these people are not that smart. Now, what's interesting is that the guy that everybody loves to hate, Adolf, also believed that Iceland could be ancient Thule. Information from this How Stuff Works article says he wanted to prove that Germanic peoples were descendants of the Aryan master race, and this drove his radical group to explore certain areas to prove it. So the SS on Narrabee, founded by Himmler, conducted archaeological expeditions worldwide, aiming to find evidence of Aryan dominance and justify German expansionism. This says despite numerous expeditions and considerable funding, these efforts failed to produce substantial evidence of Germanic superiority. So it mainly served as propaganda. In 1935, the top members of the SS, led by Himmler, founded the Ancestral Heritage Research and Teaching Society. Although it was founded by the military, it was classified as a private nonprofit institution and was not formally included as part of the SS until 1940. Their goal was to research the history of the Aryan race with an aim to prove that the mythical prehistoric Nordic population ruled the planet. And later, as we dig deeper into this, you're going to see that Hitler believed that the Aryans could be traced back to the Hyperboreans. Now we know about the bloodline connection to Neanderthals and that the Hyperboreans can be traced back to the fallen and their Nephilim seed. So was Adolf wrong? Listen, it says the Nazis believed that Germans were the descendants of this Hyperborean race. So the group led by Himmler sent teams of archaeologists to places like Bulgaria, Croatia, the Far East, Russia, Iceland, and North Africa. And it says excavating areas of Iceland was of particular interest to their group because they believed it was the site of Thule, the area where the ancient Aryan race was thought to have been born. They sent a team to Iceland in 1938 to search for a mystical place of worship where ancient Aryans paid homage to Nordic gods like Thor and Odin. But the team was hampered by restrictions from the Iceland government, so the expedition was a failure. But they did find a cave that was the location of the mystic place of worship known as the Hof. And guess who stepped in to block their efforts? The United States and England. But that wasn't the end of the story. So what were they all looking for? Let's go back and reread this section from the book Arctos. It says, it is necessary to go far back in time to the beings who arrived on Earth from outside the galaxy and founded the first Hyperborea. This is talking about the fallen angels that came into the daughters of men. It says, there has been an enormous conspiracy to conceal their origin, says Serrano. The last documents were destroyed along with the Alexandrian library. So the author says there is also a conspiracy to misrepresent them as extraterrestrials coming in spaceships or UFOs.
This morning, questions after more unidentified objects are discovered over U.S. and Canadian airspace. According to a senior administration official, this latest object was in the shape of an octagon, unmanned, and traveling near sensitive sites at an altitude of 20,000 feet, posing a civilian flight risk. First detected Saturday as it flew over Montana, President Biden gave the order to shoot it down once it reappeared on radar out of an abundance of caution and at the recommendation of military leaders.
We have been more closely scrutinizing our airspace at these altitudes, including enhancing our radar, which may at least partly explain the increase in objects that we've detected.
Is it that they don't know what these things are? Or is it that they're not ready to disclose it?
This latest air defense operation coming just 24 hours after another object was spotted over Canada. U.S. and Canadian officials ordering it shot down.
It represented a reasonable threat to civilian aircraft. Canadian and American fighter jets were scrambled, and an American F-22 successfully shot down the object.
And that incident coming just one day after another unidentified object was shot down off the coast of Alaska. 3 incidents in less than a week since that Chinese spy balloon was shot down off the Carolina coast. But a senior U.S. official saying these 3 are different from that spy balloon. None appear to have a payload, and all are smaller.
It doesn't mean that they are coming from another country. It doesn't even mean that there are more of them. We're just looking for them, and so we're finding more of them.
An intensive search effort is now underway. Recovery teams in Alaska using Navy planes and helicopters to recover and analyze those objects they find.
We're going to wrap up with this quote that was written by Viennese psychologist and author Dr. William Dahm in his biography. He says the Thule Gesellschaft name originated from mythical Thule, a Nordic equivalent of the vanished culture of Atlantis. A race of giant supermen lived in Thule. Linked into the cosmos through magical powers, they had psychic and technological energies far exceeding the technical achievements of the 20th century. This knowledge was to be put to use to save the fatherland and create a new race of Nordic Aryan Atlanteans. A new Messiah would come forward to lead the people to this goal. So I asked the question earlier, what are they looking for? That answers it, right? They are looking for their Messiah. And we already know who that will be. The false will appear before the one that is true. So we will continue this discussion on the next live this coming Wednesday at 8 p.m. Be sure to join me for that. If this message has been a blessing to you, remember to hit the like and share it. You're also welcome to subscribe if you have not already done so. We normally upload messages on Sunday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Yah willing. Join me next time.